I heard it. It was like pow, 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 pow. I just covered my head and started praying.
He couldn't afford to even buy her an outfit for the funeral.
Oh, God.
In the late hours of July 24th, 2023, a tragedy took place that left a community in shock and disbelief. An innocent woman would be shot dead after they couldn't find her husband for revenge. Just minutes before midnight, a devoted, innocent mother was tucking her children into bed, blissfully unaware that terror was about to knock on her door. Suddenly, a group of men claiming to be police officers appeared at her doorstep. But there was one glaring problem. No officers had been dispatched to her address. Before she could even question their presence, the door was forced open and the nightmare began. 5 armed men, masked, stormed into the apartment, turning the peaceful home into a scene of chaos and violence. What followed was a terrifying barrage of gunfire. The men, firing recklessly, had no regard for the family caught in their crosshairs. But the horror was just beginning. As the investigation unfolded, police would discover the shocking truth. The woman had been targeted and shot by masked men who had come for her husband. But when they couldn't find him, the innocent woman paid the price. What could have driven these men to such a brutal, violent act? The answers, as detectives would soon learn, were more twisted than anyone could have imagined. Now, let's look at the life and tragic death of Denine Trissy Lymore. Born on January 6, 1991, 32-year-old Denine Trissy Lymore was a proud mother of 4. Raised in Norfolk, Virginia, Denine grew up in a city where history and culture blend seamlessly with the harsh realities of violence. Despite the struggles around her, she rose above them. Denine was dedicated to building a better life for her children and doing whatever it took to provide for them.
Love me?
Yes.
How much?
Denine attended Booker T. Washington High School and later went on to pursue jobs that allowed her to support her family. She worked as a room attendant at the Hilton Garden Inn and later moved on to Sister Love Cleaning Services, where she worked as a supervisor. Colleagues described Denine as a hardworking, dependable woman, someone who always showed up with a smile and never gave less than her best. She was the type of person who would go above and beyond, whether it was in her work or in her role as a mother. Her dedication and commitment were evident to everyone who knew her, and she quickly became a beloved figure among her peers. But it was someone else that was the center of her world. It was her children, Lyncia, Dasan, Azir, and Diamond. Denine loved them with a depth that could be felt in every action, every word, and every gesture. They were her reason for everything. Through her social media posts, Denine often shared snapshots of their lives, videos of her children laughing, dancing, and having fun. Each post was a reminder of her unwavering love and devotion as she made it a point to remind her kids of their worth, their beauty, and how deeply they were loved. Her pride in her children shone through everything she did. Whether they were celebrating a small victory or simply enjoying a quiet moment together, Denine was always there, cheering them on and lifting them up. Her social media became a virtual scrapbook of her children's childhood, a place where memories were captured and love was freely shared. But as much as she adored her children, she couldn't see the darker clouds beginning to form on the horizon. Those who knew her said she loved fiercely and worked tirelessly to create a safe and secure world for them, despite the chaos around her. That same irresistible charm would lead her to start dating a man who would change her life in ways she could never have imagined. Denine met Bambino, a man who seemed to be her perfect match. Their relationship was the stuff of dreams, matching outfits, synchronized dance routines, and intimate clips shared on social media that painted a picture of a life filled with love and happiness. To everyone around them, they appeared to be the perfect couple, deeply in love and fully committed to each other. As their bond grew stronger, the two lovebirds made the decision to marry, and soon after, Denine had her fourth child with Bambino. Despite the fact that Bambino was only the biological father of one of her children, Denine believed, or perhaps hoped, that their love extended to her entire family. She viewed Bambino as not only her partner, but as a father figure to all of her children. The family dynamic seemed perfect on the surface. What more could a woman ask for than a loving husband and a growing family? That was until the unimaginable happened. It was July 24th, 2023, a seemingly ordinary night when Denine's world, and the world of her four children, came crashing down. Inside her Oak Park apartment in Norfolk, Denine, her husband Bambino, her brother, and their four children were just trying to get through the evening. The kids were full of energy and the adults were winding down for bed. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. When Denine opened it, a group of men claiming to be the police were standing outside. However, there was one glaring issue. No police officers had been dispatched to her home. Before Denine could even react, the door was kicked in. 5 armed men stormed the apartment. What followed was a violent, terrifying series of events that left Denine fighting for her life. The men opened fire, shooting recklessly and without warning. In the chaos, Denine's brother jumped out of a window to escape. Bambino, allegedly in the apartment during the attack, reportedly hid in a closet. Her children, ranging from toddlers to older kids, were forced to witness the horrific scene, hearing gunfire and watching their mother fall to the ground, while the people who were supposed to protect them ran or disappeared. Denine, who had dedicated her life to her children, was shot multiple times. Her brother returned to the apartment, only to find her unresponsive. The children were physically unharmed, but the trauma of the night would stay with them forever. Minutes after the shooting, police were dispatched to the scene. Officers arrived at 11:58 p.m. on the night of the shooting. The apartment complex, located on Berkeley Avenue Extension in Norfolk's Compostela neighborhood, was a quiet place in the early hours of the morning. But on this night, the sound of gunfire shattered that peace. Upon entering the apartment, officers found 32-year-old Denine Lymore and a man later identified as Martinez, a 37-year-old man, both suffering from gunshot wounds. Both victims were immediately transported to the hospital for treatment. Denine, however, would succumb to her injuries shortly after arriving at the hospital.
This afternoon, detectives in Norfolk are investigating a deadly shooting off of the Berkeley Avenue Extension. It happened last night around midnight. When police arrived, they found a man and a woman suffering from gunshot wounds. They were both taken to the hospital. The woman, 32-year-old Denine Lymore, was pronounced dead shortly after arriving at the hospital from her injuries. The man is expected to be okay.
As police began processing the crime scene, they were confronted with an overwhelming amount of evidence. Bloodstains, bullet casings, and a terrified family left reeling from the violence they had just experienced. Neighbors who had heard the gunshots were left paralyzed with fear, as many knew the area had a history of violence, but they never imagined such an event would happen so close to home. As the investigation into Denine's murder unfolded, the case quickly became more complex than just another random shooting. Detectives began piecing together details, but the information coming in wasn't making sense.
I heard it. It was like pow, 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 pow. I just covered my head and started praying.
The suspects had come for Bambino, Denine's husband, but couldn't find him. The attackers instead left Denine, a woman who had done nothing wrong, bleeding to death on the floor. Authorities quickly learned that the gunman had targeted Bambino. Some sources say he was hiding in a closet during the attack, while others claim he was present in the apartment just moments before the shooting. But here's the big question. Why was Bambino the intended target, unharmed, while Denine was killed in cold blood? As police worked on the case, suspicions began to surface. Bambino's actions following the shooting raised eyebrows. In the days that followed, the Compostela neighborhood was shaken to its core. Neighbors and loved ones of Denine gathered outside her apartment to mourn her death, leaving flowers and messages of remembrance. However, as Denine's family began to plan for her funeral, the situation took a dark turn. Bambino, who was supposed to honor Denine's memory, instead took complete control of the burial process. He refused to involve Denine's family, not consulting her parents, siblings, or her children from previous relationships. Her family was excluded from the funeral arrangements, and, most shockingly, Bambino denied Denine's children the ability to see their mother's body before the burial.
Actually, I ain't even blaming it on Metropolitan. It's her husband, and he know it too. So my beautiful cousin, hey girl, was y'all see us at the door trying to get in. The two young boys over here, they're her kids. This young lady, that's her kid. And do y'all see? They not letting it in. Oh, they let the husband go in. When he seen his wife family pull up, it was someone already in there, but then they kicked him out and told him close the casket. So we checking the doors and stuff just to see if it's locked, because it's not supposed to be over yet. And he wanted to see his mommy. Like, it's really crazy that my cousin's husband is just mad that he wasn't able to come to the candlelight. So these are two of her kids and her daddy, and we can't see her body. They even put up a sign, and it's not supposed to be over. We was calling them trying to figure out why. We was asking them, just please let the kids go in.
On the day of the funeral, things escalated further. Bambino arrived over an hour late and, instead of offering comfort, reportedly took the microphone and made a speech that caused further tension.
They saved row 1 and 2 for the husband. He only got 5 people, and then they started some stuff. Well, the husband started some stuff. He got on the mic and said, "What's up, y'all? It don't matter. I know y'all don't like me." So they got up and started leaving. Anybody got time for that?
The family, already in the grips of grief, began to walk out and protest. The emotional chaos continued as some family members were shut out, and Denine's 16-year-old daughter was forced to help carry her mother's casket. The entire funeral service turned into an unorganized, emotionally damaging event, deeply disrespectful to Denine's memory. Following Denine's tragic death, the investigation took a disturbing turn. As the police attempted to piece together the events that unfolded inside her apartment, they quickly realized that the situation was far more complex than they had initially anticipated. However, a glaring issue emerged. Bambino's version of events didn't add up. When questioned by police, Bambino claimed he had fled the scene after hearing the gunshots, but his behavior following the shooting raised suspicions. While Denine was left to bleed out, Bambino reportedly didn't attempt to help her or the children. He claimed to have sustained minor injuries while fleeing, but his actions, or rather his inaction, immediately raised red flags. The family, already grieving the loss of Denine, began to question why Bambino hadn't protected her and why he was seemingly able to escape unharmed. Why hadn't he tried to shield Denine from the violence? Why was he spared while she was shot? These questions, coupled with the fact that Bambino reportedly hid in a closet during the shooting, left many family members feeling as though he might know more than he was letting on. The investigation into Denine's death was met with silence from the authorities. The police did announce that the case was being treated as a homicide, but there were no clear answers. No suspects were named and no arrests had been made. As days turned into weeks, the family's frustration grew. While police worked tirelessly to investigate, there was an increasing feeling of helplessness. The lack of movement in the case made it seem as though Denine's murder was simply falling through the cracks. The situation was further complicated by the fact that no surveillance footage had been released and no clear descriptions of the suspects were available. Without solid evidence or leads, the investigation seemed to stall. All that was known was that Denine had died in her home, a place where she should have been safe, surrounded by her children. The lack of progress and the unanswered questions only deepened the wound that Denine's family had to bear. As the days passed, her loved ones, particularly her children, were left without closure. And with each passing moment, it became harder to move forward without justice for Denine. In the aftermath of the shooting, the Compostela neighborhood was left on edge. Residents who lived nearby described the area as a place where gun violence was a common occurrence. But even in a place where danger seemed to lurk around every corner, the murder of Denine was still an unsettling shock. Generational poverty, lack of resources, and untreated mental health issues continued to fuel the violence that plagued Norfolk, making it an increasingly dangerous place for those who lived there. The tragedy that struck Denine's family became another devastating example of the socio-political struggles many Norfolk residents face daily. Yet, Denine's case seemed different. This wasn't just another random act of violence. This was a mother, a daughter, a sister, and a friend whose life had been stolen in the most brutal of ways. Her children were left to pick up pieces of a world that had shattered before their eyes. But the family began to grow increasingly frustrated. Not only were they dealing with the pain of losing a loved one, but they also had to contend with a lack of answers and an apparent lack of urgency from the authorities. Some of Denine's family members began to publicly express their suspicions about Bambino's involvement, or, at the very least, his failure to protect Denine. Did he know more than he was letting on? Why hadn't he acted to shield his wife and children during the attack? And perhaps most importantly, why was Bambino seemingly more focused on moving forward with his life than on seeking justice for Denine? In a particularly heartbreaking twist, Bambino, the man who was supposed to support Denine through this tragedy, became increasingly distant from her family. He reportedly cut off communication with Denine's relatives, further distancing himself from the grieving family members. With each passing day, Denine's family was faced with the gut-wrenching reality that justice had not been served. Despite the public outcry, the press coverage, and the growing demand for answers, the case remained unsolved. Denine's children, who had already lost their mother, were left without closure. The trauma of the night, the gunshots, the bloodshed, and the fear was still fresh in their minds. And even now, months later, the questions still remain unanswered. Why did Denine have to die in front of her children? What happened to the suspects who burst into her home? Why was her husband, Bambino, seemingly able to walk away unscathed while she lay dying on the floor? Who is responsible for her death? As the investigation into Denine Lymore's murder continued to stall, the anger and frustration from her family and local community intensified. The lack of progress in the case created an unbearable tension. Denine's loved ones had already been forced to witness a horrific tragedy, but now they were also enduring the pain of not knowing who was responsible for her death and why it happened. The absence of answers, combined with the public silence from law enforcement, fueled a growing sense of outrage. Her family members began to openly express their dissatisfaction, not only with the police's handling of the case, but also with the way Denine's husband, Bambino, was seemingly minimizing the significance of her death. According to relatives, his actions in the days following the murder only added salt to their wounds. The frustrations escalated to the point where family members felt isolated, even from the funeral arrangements for Denine. As the weeks dragged on and the investigation failed to gain momentum, the questions about Bambino's involvement in Denine's death grew louder. Why was he not more engaged in the investigation? Why did he seem unconcerned about finding the people responsible for murdering his wife, the mother of his child? Despite his public mourning on social media, his actions in the aftermath made it difficult for anyone to truly believe his remorse. Meanwhile, the community continued to wrestle with the silence from authorities. As Denine's family continued to demand justice, they grew increasingly disillusioned with the lack of answers.
Tonight, a plea for witnesses and a call for justice. It's been 2 weeks since a double shooting on Berkeley Avenue Extension in the Compostela area of Norfolk. 32-year-old Denine Lymore was killed. A 37-year-old man survived. With the shooter still out there, the community remains on edge. 10 on your side's Kiana Patterson shares their hopes that someone will come forward to get the suspect off the streets. Kiana?
Yes, Denine Lymore is well known as Tracy, and she's a mom of 4. Those who know her say she loved her children so much.
Witnesses who might have had vital information were too scared to come forward, adding to the sense of powerlessness. The fact that no arrests had been made and no motive had been confirmed only deepened the family's suffering.
So nobody has been arrested. And a lot of y'all be saying, like, why we ain't beat his ass. We really tried to avoid beating his ass. Because the kids seen their mama, like they was in there when that to their mama. One of the kids, the husband is the daddy. So my cousin had a kid by her husband. And then he had 3 stepkids by her. He got some more kids too, but they not a part of our family. Not like that, but he just... So the other 3 kids, we not trying to be... 2 of them actually would have been happy, but 2 of them would have cried. They the babies. We wouldn't have been... I shouldn't have said that. They wouldn't have been happy.
The search for truth and accountability was going nowhere, and Denine's children were left in emotional limbo. As the public outrage mounted, Denine's family made an impassioned plea for anyone who knew something to come forward. The Norfolk Police Department had made it clear that tips could be submitted anonymously via the P3 mobile app or Norfolk Crime Line. But the fear of retaliation kept many from stepping forward. The public call for justice echoed not only for Denine's children, but also for the community at large. This wasn't just about a mother being taken too soon. It was about the unresolved violence in Norfolk, the unaddressed social issues, and the ongoing cycle of fear and retaliation that had plagued the area for years. The case had turned into a larger reflection of the challenges facing the city, and the unfortunate reality that for too many residents, justice feels unattainable. Despite the immense pain, Denine's family, in the face of all this turmoil, continued to speak out for her children, for themselves, and for Denine's memory. They held a repast, a quiet gathering for close friends and family to reflect on Denine's life. It was a space where those who truly loved her could share memories of a woman who was more than just her tragic end. The family also made it clear that they weren't seeking vengeance. Instead, they were seeking truth and accountability. They were determined that Denine's legacy would not be overshadowed by the tragedy of her death. They wanted her name remembered for the love she gave her children, the strength she showed in life, and the dignity she deserved in death. The family's message was clear. If you or someone you know is in a relationship that poses a risk, or if you see someone in danger, speak up. Don't wait for something like this to happen before taking action. Push for help and be the voice that could prevent another family from going through the same pain. As of today, Denine Lymore's murder remains unsolved, and her family's questions remain unanswered. The community is left in mourning, searching for resolution and hoping that someone, somewhere, will come forward with the truth. Denine's children, who had already endured so much, are still left without the justice they deserve. Their mother was taken from them in the most violent of ways, and they have not yet received the closure they need. The silence from law enforcement only deepens their pain, leaving them to wonder if anyone will ever be held accountable for this horrific act. Denine's life, tragically cut short, was a testament to her love for her children and her strength as a mother. Her name deserves to be remembered not just as a victim, but as a woman who fought every day for the people she loved. Her story is a reminder that silence only protects the guilty, and that justice for her is still a fight that must continue. What do you think about this case? Let us know in the comments below, and if you found this story intriguing, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.